So tonight, our guests for Gaelic are from the Mi'kmaq First Nation. And we've been meeting, actually this is a Gaelic Narrative Project, and we've been meeting since January to gather and share stories and to hear stories from guests in our community around Gaelic language and culture. And so we're using a process called reauthoring, and as the word suggests, it's about us taking the pen back in our hands and telling our story, and also checking in with our stories. Are they stories that still, are they meaningful stories? Are they still resonating with us? Or are they stories that we need to leave behind? And these stories we tell about ourselves and about others are important, and they're powerful because they form narratives that are the bottom of our institutions and our society. So it's good to check in with them. And just to illustrate this, I wanted to share a little story from when I was younger. And when I was young, I used to watch cowboy and Indian movies. And the way these movies were created and how they came into our homes, you know, they made us cheer for the white cowboys. They were the good guys. And they were also very violent, and they really scared me. So one day I asked my father, I said, "Are there Indians that live around here?" And he said, "Yes, in Waikagama." And I thought, okay, Waikagama's far from me. So I was sort of relieved. So these stories and other stories come together to create how we view people, and they contribute to racism in our society. And it's also the absence of stories. So if we don't hear people's stories, they might be invisible. So in reauthoring, or the first part is for us to listen to people's story. And it wasn't until I started learning Gaelic and I became interested in other cultures and other stories and other languages and Mi'kmaq culture. And it was really through, you know, Truth and Reconciliation Commission stories, as well as a group I was involved in called Magic, that brought me into the Waikoma First Nation, and to hear from firsthand stories, stories of resilience and kindness and generosity, but also stories of frustration and anger about how people were treated. So the first step in all of this is to listen to the voices that we need to hear more of, and that's what we'd like to do in our Gaelic tonight. So normally we have breakout rooms, and our time is moving along, and I am wondering if, let me see, it's now 7:50. Maybe we can have a breakout room for about 5 minutes, just so our practice is just so we can greet each other and say hello and where we're calling from. So if we could just have a short breakout room, and then we'll come back and we'll greet and meet our guests. Had a nice little, can you hear me? It says I'm muted, but
Sorry.
Great, super. Now I hope you had a nice little Kaylee Beckbita. I had a nice chat. So we're going to welcome our guests now for the interview portion. So if you could bring on, I know Rosie's here. Hi, Rosie. Nice to see you. And
Hello,
there's,
Frances.
hi. How are you doing, John?
I'm good now. After three phones or computers, I got to speak in here.
Oh, great. So glad that you could join us, because I was worried. We were having difficulty with technical difficulties. And there's Kenny. Hi, Kenny. Jalasi, Valcha.
Oh, should I mute that?
Oh, you're okay. You're not muted. We can hear you.
I was muted. I just unmuted it.
Okay, super. I think we're all set. I think we're okay to go. Well, thank you all for coming. And we were going to have John Tiny Cremo. John William Cremo, you were going to do a little blessing for us before. Would you be able to do that now? Is that?
I can do it now, but it won't be the fully, but we'll go through the process, I guess.
That'd be nice. That would be wonderful.
I usually do it in the morning.
I
And
see.
in my morning, and I would probably face all the directions that I have to.
Okay.
The first direction I usually face is the east, the eastern direction. Jibenuk, the Maui Gadu. Nagu said, let's come up, Juleson. Let's come out and be like Nagu, gigging a moxino. I had up to the Megalook and down the last game of these. Head up to the ma Glook and Nagwek. I popped up key all away, so was it. You get a moon and Galook, salt to the Gizuk. I salt to them to one, you get them one. I charred one. You get a moyagaladan, which me majority. It's good, you know, tea. You'll be dying to Nogama. You'll be dying Pleasantnook, the south. Sage and Adela at the water, my God, Duke. You do my amigo. Anki Dela move. Axis Hamo. Anki Dela man is good, you know, down it down while I look see, I bought a moxie, Kigamana, Kidapana. A town, I guess he will have my tiki, a good tiki. You get a muella and a hoida, make a lutan, chartisnen, at a hoida, get artisnet. They get a moon and let a hoila, me but you walk on. To you all about in them should know Gama the Wachtamai. And the Wachtamai doesn't look, the west. Some Sigonade with ya, sweet day. Lep couldn't set a pukto. Well, Ali and Nadia gets a muella, gets cook nagwek. Ach, meet deep to nagwek someday, you got on a nagwek. Nanin and Mount Nagwek, and I'll go yardis then. Happy away, as it humble doesn't. I'll die Nadia, sit humble down, will discuss no down Gizuk. Gizuk Nadia, the Gigamuxi at times, so sit humble down. Wajadi, a happy away, sit humble down, Igamuya, Alalia. Alalia, them sitting or nook to the north direction. Now they were that with a cedar, musicist, someone. Alalia, the Gisamuya, the Hoy, and the Gistel Takai Wuxia, at the Hoy, and Delta Wuxi. Wajadu Nadia, damn me much walking. Dan wat je op daar gizo kissing in de moxie. Wel daar zie je de moxie melking in Audi, melky dasim. Atagita da gadim. Wel daar zie je de moeie dat deli toe gaat daar maule goed in de skin of mau gilo wankie dele moele te goeie wiek. Te goeie wiek dan moet laten snel lagooi dan is je water no kiskoek. Wel bij ons is nog maar. Ik ga maar zit gamo. Ik ga maar hier moet wiek dan naar hooi. Dan zit gamo dan hooi dan gizik dan hooi dan wat je doet. Ahoy dan waises skujinu wala ali etagis gina muya la det akisi watis na la sit hamo dan nums da kisi minimum sin wala ali kisu kisi gina muya la jola bas misigis keduk na de ali gina muya misigis misigis awala mo waka asamila sig misigis la imudi waji anade dan edip juma ta nda khowe me menewaki ata ndahoy me bewad siawasi ata duglukan walali akisul ta gisigina muyela dan dekki gede tambu nemidu pasuk ata del dam kada waktu madi ga dan del ga asmel gis ke gay mudi ga khoji walali la gisigina muyela dan edub judumenen anam sudnogama walalin. That's it.
Walalian.
But that's a short prayer.
Oh, thank you. That was beautiful. That was very lovely. It's lovely to hear your language, Tapuat. So I'd like to introduce my guest just briefly. I'll start with Rosie Sillaboy, and Rosie's from Waikoma First Nation, where she manages Maui Dam, which is a community-based group home where Mi'kmaq with disabilities are celebrated and nurtured, and where Mi'kmaq identity is celebrated and honored. She's a member of the Waikoma Wishkoa I'm not sure if I would have pronounced that, sorry, drummers. And Rosie's very devoted to her family, community, and language and culture. And Rosie was one of the founding members of MAGIC, the group we created, the Mi'kmaq, Acadian, and Gaels, and we had wonderful gatherings pre-COVID. And John William Cremo, who sometimes often goes by Tiny Cremo, you might hear us call that tonight. He's from the Cremo, Sillaboy, and Denny clans. He's a member of the Mi'kmaq Grand Council and a Waccamaw counselor. And Tiny's been very involved in his community. He's lived all his life in Waccamaw, and he has 7 children and 17 grandchildren. I think we might hear some in the background. And he's a teacher and fire chief, very active in his community. And with us also is Kenny Prosper. And Kenny grew up in Eskasoni First Nation, and he now lives in Halifax. And he is the son of Bessie and Wilfred Prosper. Many of us on the call, we might remember or know of Wilfred Prosper, who was a great Cape Breton fiddler. And he was also a really important elder in the community. And Kenny has worked for 25 years. Well, he recently retired as a Native hospital liaison interpreter. And Kenny's very interested in Mi'kmaq language and genealogy. Those are his passions, and he does part-time work as a translation. He's also a member of the Wabanaki Two-Spirit Alliance. So, Palchoravula, thank you all for joining us tonight. So I think I will start with you, Rosie. I have some questions. And so how are you, Rosie? Are you doing okay? Are you in?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Frances. Like I was saying earlier, I have power. And last week it was quite different. So yeah, no, it's so hopefully we stay with our power. I know it's pretty windy out there.
Yes, I know. And Rosie, we were in our sessions that we've had for the Gaelic Narrative Project, we've been focusing this season on the word leòr, which is a Gaelic word that means plenty, but it also means enough. And I just wanted to ask you if you might be able to take us to a time in your community when you had this feeling of enough, like you felt really content and full, a moment where, things don't get better and any better than this. So where were you? Who were you with and what were you up to? Anything comes to
it would have to be some kind of a celebration. So possibly Christmas, because that was the time that you felt like there was plenty. There was all kinds of food, all kinds of people around, and it was just a good feeling. Mm-hmm. And I remember, when we were younger, when I was younger, that was just a couple of years ago, that we used to gather quite a bit and meet at the hall. Maybe it was a concert or something happening. But it seems to me there was a lot of great memories that come with a gathering like that. Mm-hmm. So that's my first thought when I think about it.
Nice. Very good. And what kind of, I at the beginning I kind of mentioned some stories, that would have millions of us would have heard stories, watched through television or the media. But I'd like to know, what kind of stories did you hear in your own language about your community and your people? What did you hear from your own people about your history?
My own people?
Yeah, and especially like what would in your language? Yeah.
Well, I would hear a lot of stories about how our people had survived through many different diseases or whatever, and come together as a community to support one another. So I would hear a lot of stories like that, because for me, growing up in Wegoma, and I experienced a lot of racism growing up, and I don't know. I don't know if it's because of your location or whatever, but you know, it's something because I grew up. My mother was she's a survivor of residential school, and then I had my father was a carpenter and worked very hard. So, you know, a lot of times there'd be drinking or whatever. And then, you know, we'd be out somewhere and then I would experience that racism and all that stuff. But the thing that always, you know, helped me was my mother would tell us stories about, you know, this wasn't just us, you know, it's been happening, but, you know, we still, we're very resilient because no matter what, there were still good people out there. You know, don't judge people and all that stuff. So that was something that I learned at a young age.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the other part, when you said watching those shows, you know, the old westerns or whatever, because I remember my mother, you know, telling me the story when she was young, and she talked about how she would cheer for the cowboys, you know, and little did she know that she was Indian, and she tells that story. So, you know, so yeah, and
Imagine, yeah, yeah. I guess I was going to ask you how those kind of stories and how kind of those, you know, in the absence of information too, the fact that we didn't learn about the Mi'kmaq or any of the First Nations or Métis, Inuit, like we didn't learn about that in our history. It might be a little different now, but our age group didn't learn about that, or anybody older. Like, how did that impact you, I guess? And
yeah,
I guess
well, I think the other part too is, you know, going to school in Mabu, you know, we face racism there too. And I know I've talked about that before, but when I graduated from high school, I went on Canada World Youth, and Canada World Youth gave me that ticket out of my community because it was a new start. So when I left and I got to Ontario and all that stuff, I didn't tell anybody I was Mi'kmaq. I didn't tell anybody, you know, because I said, well, this is my fresh start, because I didn't think I was that dark, you know, I could pass as being non-native. So it was like I said, my new identity. So when I was in Ontario, and then when I got up there and they were talking about the native people and this family I was living with, and they were saying how much they respected the Indigenous knowledge and all that stuff. And I was shocked because it wasn't something I was used to. And I said, wow, you know, and I still didn't say I was Mi'kmaq. And it wasn't until the family that I was living with took me to Six Nations Reserve, the Six Nations community in Ontario. And we went through the community, and that elder there, you know, he showed me the community and all that. And it was amazing just hearing their history and all that stuff. And at the end of our visit there, he tells me, don't ever be ashamed of who you are. And I looked at him and it's like, how does he know? But what I didn't know was my mother had called the Billiton family I was living with and talked about me being Mi'kmaq, and the mother said, no, Rosie has never talked about her being Mi'kmaq. And so that was a big eye opener for me.
Nice. Rosie, like, and did you mention, did your mother tell you to come back home? Was she wanting you to come back home? And she was an important part of your life as well in terms of connecting with your language and.
Yeah, big time. Well, thing was, growing up, she was very hard on us with our language, you know, making
Yeah.
sure that we knew our language. It was important that we knew our language and our prayers, you know, and to go to church. That was very important to her. So anyway, when I left my community and I said, yeah, Mom, I'll go to church and all that stuff. And then I wasn't going to church. And then I had to go to church because I was lying to my mother. And then I had to go to confession and all this stuff because it was still bothering me. So, you know, and then I really tried hard to speak my language. Being in Halifax, you know, and just reaching out to people, you know, there was a small community of people there. And so, you know, just trying to make sure that I spoke my language and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And then there was a time when because the other part was I didn't know my mother went to residential school. I never knew she went to residential school. And then when I found out that piece that she had gone to residential school, then it clicked, you know, why she tried so hard to make sure that we spoke our language, you know, and I'm not going to say she beat it into us, but it almost felt like it, you know, just making sure that we learned our language, you know, and our prayers, because she would record and tape herself and, you know, it would be there so we would hear it. And so we would continue. And, you know, and I never realized how important our language was until later on, you know, as I got older. But, you know, and I'm so grateful that my mother, she was that my strength or my whatever. So yeah, I give credit to her for all of that.
Yeah, we had a woman in the Helen McKinnon said in the chat, she said your mother knew the soul of survival. You know, she had a sense, she did. She's quite a woman, Margaret. And if anyone is able to put a link in, there's a film that was made on Margaret about the dolls she made at residential school. It's a beautiful film, and we'll put it in the link in our summary. But if you want to put it in the chat too, it's a lovely story that was put on film about her making dolls. I'd love to. I want to. We don't have enough time, Rosie, but I have a question. I'll come back at the end. But thank you so much, and love to hear more and hear more about your mom and her story too.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Tiny. I was going to ask you about, you've lived in Waikoma all your life, and what do you love most about your community? And what do you feel there's plenty of in your community, in Waikoma? Or in Mi'kmaq, in the Mi'kmaq communities in general?
Okay, well, I'm related to Rosie. She's my first cousin.
Yes.
We have the same grandmothers, different mothers. And like Rosie, my mother went to residential school and our uncle went to the residential school.
Ben
so,
Syllaboy?
Ben Syllaboy, the Grand Chief.
Yeah, Grand Chief, yes.
Of the Grand Council. I'm also a captain in the Grand Council since 2001. I went in there, but that's not it. Waikoma was a good place for me to live. Everything was new in the 60s. I didn't speak Mi'kmaq language, and all my my grandparents, they spoke English, but mostly Mi'kmaq when we were in their homes. And my uncles and my aunts and my granduncles and grandaunts, they all spoke the language, hardly spoke English. My father hardly spoke English, so mostly we spoke Mi'kmaq. And what was it is my father was a strange person. He worked like Rosie's father. He worked all over the place, different kind of jobs, wasn't much educated, but you can do carpentry, mechanic, mason work, plumber, electrician, farming, and all that kind of stuff that passes down. So when the word came along, Nedugulim, and Nedugulim for me, it means that you go to the either to the river, the waters, or go to the woods and provide food for yourself and for the family, mostly. So you had to have those skills. But my father, he said, "Hey, Dad, how come you don't hunt?" Well, he said, "I got a job. And when I have a job, and people that don't have a job, that's their store, the woods, the water. So
Right.
I don't have to take their food away from them. I can
Uh-huh.
buy mine." So, so that's what he believed. My mother was educated. She became an RN after she came from the not really after she grew up all with us, all 8 kids, and everybody was out, and then she started going education for herself and became an RN later on in her life. She was a CHR, community health representative for the reserve for the longest time. So, but she had to upgrade her credentials to become a nurse. So she went on, and I was 16, 17, and 18, I think, years old at that time, and with the help with my aunts that live around us, they helped us because my father would go out working in Labrador or St. John's or all over the place. So it was up to us to maintain the family. But when you're in the Ulnu, when you're after 10 years old, you're almost considered as an adult because you could provide for the family, help the family. Plus, I went to school and everybody went to school, so we left. They would ship money somehow to us to buy food, and we had a very fancy van because there's 8 of us. So they would send the money and gas money, and like I was 16 years old, I was driving kids to the hockey games and ball games um, that were 6, 7, 8, or maybe up to 13 years of age. People trusted me when I turned 16, like like an adult. Today, I wouldn't trust anybody, any 16-year-old to drive my kids to the hockey game
Yeah.
in a snowstorm and coach them. But that was like that before, and I'm so grateful that even Rosie's father and my aunts and my uncles helped me how to do hunting and fishing and take care of the animals and make wood, get basket strips and all that. We all worked together like that. And if I needed something else, I went to ask other people around me, my godparents, and they would help me there to I need you to get wood, to get firewood. So they made me feel important in that way, so to help people. And if you see a cross right beside me, it's a fireman. So I've been a firefighter since I was 16 years old as a first aider. And what intrigued me to be a firefighter and to help people is when I was around 9 years old. 9 years old, we lost our neighbors in a fire, and I said to myself, I want to be a firefighter. I don't want none of my friends to pass on like that anymore. And I'm so lucky after that happened. We never lost anybody in a fire yet. Knock on wood.
Thankfully.
So so that's why I became a firefighter. All my boys are firefighters. My girls, we're all kind of helping people, and uh, and get training. We are trained so much in helping people in firefighting, emergency cases, and to help the other community members to
Oh, well.
become as much as whatever. I know it's a volunteer work, but it's a rewarding in a lot of ways, and
Wow.
and I find everybody that can do the same thing. And as of our language, we're losing our language because as of 1993, I became a school teacher because teaching people how to speak the language. When I went to school to learn the English and to write in English. I never understand a word in English till I went to school. That's my name. What's your name? And I didn't know my name was John William Cremo. I always call myself as Tiny. Everybody
Right.
calls me.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
living in the community, I think we all work together. I think we all need together. And this day and age in Wegokama, our land capacity is so much we got nowhere to put our houses. But if you look at the the land where the land is and what they left as reservations. It's not the best land that you can give anybody to.
Mhm.
But that was, that was being an Illinois, I guess. Illinois being prejudiced and all that. I see that a lot. I
Mhm.
played hockey, I played ball. I went to non-native schools and I faced that. But we still manage because someday I
Mhm.
said, I'm going to beat you in your game. I'm going to be a
Mhm.
school teacher or whatever I can be,
Mhm.
and I will speak your language, know your ways. And I'll tell you something, you won't know my ways.
Mhm. Mhm. Amazing resilience, Tiny. And um, what do you think? It sounds like to me that your community had such a important role to play in giving you strength to face a lot of difficult things, racism and all that you had to go through.
All right.
Um,
I
like
went,
what you
we
painted a
just have to
picture.
talk, we just have to talk about it, and
Mm-hmm,
get familiar with
mm-hmm,
it. It's not everybody. Not
mm-hmm.
everybody's like
Yeah,
that.
well, it is.
You have a lot of good friends on the non-native land too. I have a
Mhm.
lot of good friends. I played hockey with them. I played ball with them. We're in the fire service. We're in the Coast Guard. We're in the everywhere. I have a lot of good friends.
Yeah, but it still exists. And I know one time, Rosie, you were saying one time about truth and reconciliation that people like to skip to the reconciliation part and not go through the truth part. But you've got to go through that as well. So I'll always remember that, you saying that. Um, well, thank you so much, Tiny, for sharing that. And I wish we had more time to talk. I have a lot of more questions, but this is just the beginning. As we'd say in Gaelic, this is just a táiseach táiseach, the beginning of the beginning. So hopefully we'll have more conversations. I wanted to just say hello to you, Kenny, and bring you into the conversation. Kenny, you, Rosie, and Tiny grew up in Wakeoma, but you grew up in Eskasoni, which is, I think, it's the biggest reserve in.
It's the biggest reserve now. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you grew up in a very big family. There was 15, I think. Bessie
Well,
and Wilford Prosper were your
my
parents.
parents had 14 children that they
Oh,
raised.
14.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I have another sister that she grew up in the States.
Okay.
So that's 15.
All right. And your father, I know, well, a lot of people knew him as a fiddler, but he was a really respected elder, and he was very much referred to for a lot of traditions and language. And so naturally, everybody would have spoke Mi'kmaq in your house.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. And what was important to your parents to pass on to you?
When we were growing up, we were like, everybody always had to pitch in and help around the house and make sure that we share all the household, or the boys do their job, the girls do their job. We always had a farm, like chickens, vegetables that last all in garden. And
Mm-hmm.
prayer was important to them, so we were always pray, but it was in our language.
Mm. Would you pray the rosary in in Mi'kmaq?
We would do
And
the rosary in Mi'kmaq, yeah, and he was very encouraging for all of us to get educated, to go to school and get somewhere ahead, because they didn't have much education when they were younger, so they wanted that for us.
mm-hmm.
We grew up in Chapel Island, where everybody spoke Mi'kmaq. That's the first language when they start school, and then they moved to Eskasoni in the 40s.
Mm-hmm. And when you left, sorry,
They got married in 1952.
right. When you went to Halifax, you started working as a native hospital liaison interpreter. What was that job like?
I enjoyed that job because you're there to help the Native people that were in the hospital get treatment and other stuff that they didn't understand, or be like the liaison with the hospital or the community health center or wherever they can get help, or just somebody to talk to while they're there. That speaks their language.
Yeah, would make a big difference to them to have somebody there that they knew for sure. And you also like did a lot of work on your own on learning Mi'kmaq. Like you became learned.
I had the interest.
Yeah, you did. You
My
taught.
father taught music, I guess, or like he learned how to read music from one of the nuns in Eskasoni, and then he was with the Caperton Fiddlers for years, and then he was with the Eskasoni choir, helping them to like preserve the Mi'kmaq hymns.
Yeah.
He was like one of the prayer leaders in the community.
Yeah. And you would have, in Eskasoni, you would have had the Gaelic communities on either side of you, like in East Bay and.
Yeah, there were. A lot of the people in the surrounding community spoke Gaelic, the older people anyway.
Yeah, they did. And what were were there any kind of, was there interactions, would you say, between the
My
communities?
father had friends in both areas. This is Island vernacular because he was with the Caperton Fiddlers and he knew a lot of people there.
Yeah. And did you ever know of any, you hear sometimes of Mi'kmaq folks, people that spoke Gaelic. I don't know if any, yeah.
I don't
Sometimes
really know of any, but there might have been some that spoke a little bit.
Yeah, you do hear some stories. I don't know. Maybe they did have a little bit. Kenny, if there was a word, if you had to pick a word in Mi'kmaq that really captured how the Mi'kmaq people see the world, what would that word be? Like, can you think of a word? It's a tough question to put you on the spot like that, but
How we see the world, I guess you have to say it literally. Don't let me do it.
I guess I don't mean it literally. I'm just thinking like your view. Yeah.
You would see it differently because the language is structured different because of it's verb-based, whereas English is noun-based.
Right.
Or you can say one word in one sentence in one word because you just add prefixes and suffixes to make the word.
And as a verb-based language, I wonder how that impacts it. How that impacts.
I don't really, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
You see time and space, I guess.
Yeah. And right now you work as a translator?
I do Mi'kmaq translations, yeah. That's a part-time job. It was like, so I just had the interest because my father had interest in the language too.
Yeah. When you live in Halifax, do you speak much Mi'kmaq in Halifax?
Yeah, with a few of my friends that live here. But I can't really go out much since this COVID started. There's no more like socializing at where we used to go.
Yeah. Do you ever?
My own tiny little bubble, just a couple of people that I see frequently.
That's good to have some people to speak with.
Speak Mi'kmaq. Well, my cousin doesn't speak Mi'kmaq, but she is Mi'kmaq. But because her mother was war bride from Holland.
Do you ever think that there can be? Do you ever imagine a time in Halifax where there may be more Mi'kmaq spoken there, that it might thrive in a place like Halifax?
I wish they did, but there's no gathering place. Even the Friendship Center, I don't think they have any staff that speak Mi'kmaq there now. Not that I know of.
Well, thanks, Kenny. We're just coming down to our time, and I wanted to ask you all this question to conclude here. And getting back to this idea of having enough. So if everybody, if everyone in Mi'kma'ki had enough, had what they needed, how would that make your daily life different? If especially if folks in your own community had enough, what would that look like?
Oh my God. We'd have clean drinking water. We'd have sufficient housing. We'd have land. Because really, when you look at,
there's a lack of a lot of things.
Right?
uh,
Those are basic things.
There's not enough land base. This is a major thing.
Not enough land.
Enough land.
For sure, there's the population is growing on the reserves, and there's not enough land or housing. Yeah.
I
And it's
got enough
the
housing.
fastest
I live in
growing.
Wegokoma. We put up around 60 houses for the past 2 years all over. We have 100 more, but we got no place to put them.
It's interesting. Well, it's ironic, isn't it? Because at the beginning, we say the land acknowledgement often. Well,
We're on this land, but we don't own the land.
I know. So it's an irony that we say that. Yeah.
Just
Anyway,
like heaven.
What was that?
It's just like heaven. We just hear the word, know the word.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to ask another question that might be a bit hard to answer too, but it might be what is your wildest dream for the future of Mi'kma'ki? What would you, I mean, just all of those things, you could have whatever you would want to see. Imagine what could be wonderful here in Mi'kma'ki for the Mi'kmaq people, for everyone. What would that look like?
Strong self of identity, language. Language is so connected to, and I remember, so I think it was Ann Verrill that shared a link there, but do you speak my language? And I remember a part in there where it says, where somebody's asked how it's so connected to your spirit. And it's so true. Like I was saying earlier, I work at a group home, and when I got a call to see somebody and they said they were lonely, and I looked around and it's a full building, there's lots of people there, and he said, I'm lonely, I miss speaking my language. And it was like, wow, that's such a big part of us. So, if every Mi'kmaq person were to be speaking Mi'kmaq, to save our language.
Right.
That's why way back. How many years have you been open now, Rosie?
Since 2001.
2001. In the early 1980s, I was working on that project, the Maui Dam project. And it wasn't just me, it was my uncle, my aunts, my mother, and there was this guy who just came around and does the same thing was Tom Gunn. And we started this association called the Maui Dam Society. And with this Maui Dam Society, we were seeing people that were like not mentally challenged, not really, but what do you call it, Rosie?
Disabilities.
Disabilities and all that for the future of them, because it's hard living in the reserve, and it's hard for them to be a spokesperson for themselves, to get a house, to live by themselves. Who can trust to live with them? So what we had two people in my family, and my mother's dream was, if I die and your dad dies, what do we do with your brother and sister? I know as our heart and whatever, one of us will probably take them, or some of us will take them. But my mother wasn't comfortable because he knew other people had that issues. They're losing their culture. They're losing family, they said. And culture is important too. So when we established it, and you should see the red tape trying to put something that is provincial in a federal ground and to meet all those challenges, it took us 11 years just to get the in our reserve so we can put the building in that way. It took 11 years.
Just
And,
to get the right
but
to build a house.
we
Right.
had the money to have the house. We had the money, and we wanted in the reserve and to have a license from the province. The province said we don't go in federal ground, so we had to meet all their criteria and their guidelines, and we done it. You know, with the help of some politicians we had, and we were able to do it. And I'm so grateful that I was in there. I was a president for 11 years. And I was in the board for maybe 4 years after that. And I said, that's enough. You know, we got it going. Let it
Yeah.
continue. Let my let my cousin continue.
Right.
You know,
Well,
but
my friend
with
said, go ahead.
but what I would to see is equality, equality everywhere. You know, I'm a little bit darker than in any of you, so I'm spotted more. You know,
Yeah.
and when you hear me talk, I don't have the best of English, even though I'm a school teacher. But I speak my language when I'm teaching.
You have,
My ideas are from my Ilno side. You know, my Ilno side of the brain. You know.
Well, I wish we could keep on talking, and I hope we do keep on talking. And I really, we're going to go into a breakout room and sort of digest what we've heard and talk about it a little bit with some questions we'll give you. But before we do that, I want to thank you so much, the three of you, for coming on, agreeing to come on this to be interviewed. And also I must say the tenacity and the strength you have is an incredible inspiration. And I would love to see, I'm sure all of us on the call here would just love to see your language flourish here in Mi'kma'ki. And I hope that'll happen for sure. So, Walalian, and thank you so much. And it's not over though, we're going to go back in our breakout rooms. And we're going to take about 20 minutes or so, and we'll be mixed up again in groups of 3. And we're going to just reflect on some questions. And if everybody, when we're in the groups of 3, we take our time and listen, and everybody gets an opportunity to share. So we say roughly about 7 minutes or so each. And then after, we don't just listen to the person that's talking and then the next person goes, and it's a real gift to just sit and listen to someone's story. So the questions we have here is just what struck you or moved you in what you heard in the conversations today? And what is something that you know now that maybe you didn't know before? Or is there something you'd like to learn more about? So, and Natasha will put the questions in the chat, and so we'll go into our rooms and spend some time together chatting, and then we'll come back and we'll have some closing. So, tap a leave. Thank you. Conversation. Yeah, we had a really good conversation in our group, and a lot of reflecting on the conversations that were what we heard from Rosie and Tiny and Kenny. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to take some time, about 5 minutes, to write in the chat, and we're going to put some questions in the chat that might get you thinking about what to write. And what we do with the chat is we collect it and we archive it so we can, this is kind of the meaning making of the narrative process of trying to understand what we heard and share it publicly. So the questions are, what surprised you in what you heard today? What connections are you making? And is there an action that you're inspired to take? And also in our group, it came up, it was something that we wondered, and it may be if Rosie or Tiny or Kenny or others that are here, what could we do? And we were very sad about the language loss in particular, and that seems to be so important. So is there anything we could do as well to help with the Mi'kmaq who trying to reclaim their language? So these are some thoughts, and we can share in the chat. Any ideas are welcome. And it's especially from Rosie or Tiny, is there anything that we can do? And do we gotta have a little music?
Yeah.
Mhm. Lots of lovely comments coming in and thoughts. Struck. Oh, sorry. Harness electronic resources to help. They have been helpful with other minority languages in the era of textbooks. It was more difficult.
That's a good thing. Like you asked me how I can help. What can we do to help you? My always question is, I should be asking that question too. As an Nulno, how can I help how can I help to be an Nulno? How can I help to have my language? How can I learn to be accepted with my language? I'm not asking for pity and all that, but we all have a role, and our role is, I always say, is the family, clan, the mothers have a big role on that, and to continue to believe. We have so many obstacles, the church, the government, the reservations. We can't win. We cannot win, So a lot of them gave up, got educated, went to religion. They what we done, they put us to shame in that way, took our beliefs away and our honors, you know. Look how much we got left.
Mhm.
If you could make it better, that'd be good.
You have a lot left,
Oh, yeah.
Tiny.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm only 60. I got 160 more to go.
I hope so. Yeah.
Live
I mean,
long
I
like
know-
member two.
Yeah, after they gave him a Catholic or whatever, took only 1 year.
Yeah, true.
Uh,
I know my
keep-
circumstances are different, but as a descendant from the Highlands of Scotland, the Gaels lost their language. And it's very important for me. I'm not trying to compare myself in any way, shape, or form to the life that was what was done to the Mi'kmaq people. But when it comes to the language, just the language in itself, the elders in my house, they spoke nothing but Gaelic, and that was, Gaelic was beat out of them, and they were ashamed to speak Gaelic, and now I'm almost an elder, even though I'm 4 years older than Tiny. I want to get my language. I want to get that ancestry language back. It's my mother tongue. Gaelic is the language of my people, and I want to be able to get it back, and I want to be able to speak it to others, and I want my children and my grandchildren. I'm fine that English is there, but there's a real big piece missing that I don't have my language. And it felt kind of good to hear, listening to Kenny and Rosie and Tiny speaking about the language.
Thank you. Tapaleta Chasiana. Thank you, Katriana. I'm seeing that we're getting very close to the end of our time here, and the comments are just, I cannot wait to read the chat. There's some lovely comments, and we will share the chat with everyone so we get to see what we're saying, and hopefully we can continue having these conversations and finding ways to move forward together, because we're here together and living in Mi'kmaq. So yeah, we would like to keep thinking and imagining what the possibilities are. So I want to sign off and just say thank you so much to my guests, John William Cremo, Tiny Cremo, and Kenny Prosper and Rosie Sillaboy. Very so insightful. We'll be thinking about your words for a long time now. And thank you to our tech team, and thank you to Gaelic Affairs and How We Thrive for your support, and our wonderful core team of people. And most of all, thank you all for coming and sharing the evening with us. Come back. Next week is our last Gaelic Narrative Project, and it's going to be kind of a wrap up of the session. So please join us. It'll be fun, and we'll be looking back at some of the highlights, which I'm sure some will come from this evening. And before we go, we have a real treat. Rosie Sillaboy is going to sing for us, and that's how we will say goodnight, and we'll sign off with Rosie's beautiful voice, and we'll pin her. I hope she's still here. She didn't take off. No, she's here. Are you ready, Rosie?
Yes, I am.
Friend.
I thought I was going to get away with it, but so anyway, I want to sing. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to sing a song called Gojwa, and it was written by Richard Pollitt. And they're known as Morning Star. I'm going to sing my version of it, but I encourage you to buy their album, or what's that called? Not YouTube. Anyway, buy their album and hear their version of it. It's a beautiful tune. So anyway, here goes. So the words go: our people used to play the drum. They used to sing Gojwa. They had a lot of fun, and everyone was dancing the Gojwa. And the Gojwa is our traditional dance. And then the next line goes: we sing the words our parents used to sing. They used to tell us how highly they thought of Gojwa. And then the other part is: they try not to forget the fun our people had. Let's teach our children to pass this on so that they will keep dancing the Gojwa. So the words here are, some of them I have a hard time saying, and let alone trying to sing it. So I know you guys won't know, but I know Tiny and all the Mi'kmaq speakers will know. So, okay. So, Kigamana'i bet kujade madibni Gojwa il de mide Keziajo adamudis nigna on the wind to di said when Gojwa wolf dibni Blue suwara mena elte mogo Gungi gana il de midabno Yagnodmo moxie govnigo Get me dead as a govnigo With no wasutik mo kwanda sutik Dane wafadamudibni Get no madus no dandel sawadudido Galamana Gojwa wolfdida Blue suara mena elte mugo Gungi gana il de mi de no Get me de la sick of nigo Jualupe Jiju o Jualupe Jiju o Jualupe Jiju o Jualupe Jiju Jualupe Jiju o Jualupe Jiju Jualupe Jiju o Jualupe Jiju o Jualupe Jiju o Jualupe Jiju o Tahoe.
Yahoo! Thank you, Rosie.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hello, okay.
I love your spirit, Rosie.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Vola. Thank you.
Good night.
Hi, Shiva.
Which is a significant.
Dankjewel.
Don't really matter.
Happily, that was the.
Kors sitt lugn, god mor. Som,
Ah.
för att